Just in the last few moments, the BBC has confirmed that US tariffs against China add up to 145%. That is including the existing 20% tariffs that were already imposed on the country.
Hoy, una noticia explosiva. La Casa Blanca acaba de confirmar que las tarifas de EE.UU contra productos chinos han alcanzado el nivel histórico del 145%. El anuncio causó pánico en Wall Street, confusión en Washington y encendió una alerta roja en Pekín. Estamos ante un nuevo capítulo en la guerra comercial entre las dos mayores potencias del planeta.
I mean, this 145% is the clarification from the White House today. The BBC finally has that number now. But there was a bit of a confusion earlier because, yes, as you say, Mr. Trump had tweeted earlier, put it on his Truth Social earlier, that the tariff rate on China will be 125%. So now the White House has clarified that, yes, there is the existing 20% that Mr. Trump has slapped on China due to what he accuses China of is letting fentanyl flow to the U.S. So now we have the 145%. But I want to point out that this is kind of a telling of how much confusion and still uncertainty around this tariff announcement. Even in the Congress here, we saw earlier the Republicans and the Democrat senators talk about this tariff issue, and there seems to be an amazing amount of confusion. Let me just read you one quote from Republican Senator Ron Johnson, and he was saying, "I still don't know what his total strategy is," referring to Mr. Trump. "I don't know what the end game is here." And Democratic Senator Elisa Slotkin, she was saying, "I'm just trying to understand what the hell is happening." And it seems that there's even confusion amongst the White House, amongst the staff of Mr. Trump. Yesterday, we saw Mr. Jameson Greer, who is Mr. Trump's top trade official. He was testifying in front of the Congress. And as he was testifying for hours, he's appeared to be unaware of this 90-day pause that Mr. Trump has announced, and that led him to being berated by one of the Democratic politicians, saying that, hey, your boss seems to know something that you don't. So all these uncertainty, it looms over what the market is going to do for the next 90 days.
Estamos viendo mucho más que una disputa comercial. Estamos ante una guerra de influencia global. ¿Será que Trump está intentando revertir décadas de dependencia de EE.UU China por la fuerza? ¿O será esta solo una maniobra de alto riesgo para devaluar el dólar y ganar ventaja en las exportaciones? Ahora es tu turno de opinar. ¿Crees que esta decisión fortalecerá la economía estadounidense o causará un colapso mayor? ¿Y China la aceptará o tomará represalias? Comenta aquí abajo. Y no te olvides, suscríbete al Código 45, activa la campana para recibir los próximos capítulos de esta tensión global. Hasta el próximo video.
We have this sudden euphoria overnight, and then you're hit by this sobering realization in the hangover of the next day that you still have, even if you don't have quite the multilateral trade war that Trump was talking about a few days ago, a bilateral trade war on a scale we haven't seen in decades with the US and China, and all kinds of uncertainties facing the auto industry, facing the likes of Canada and Mexico, who still face 25% tariffs. Basically, all kinds of uncertainty. And anyway, the trade war has just been postponed for 90 days. He hasn't cancelled it.
Exactly, and that's really important just to keep stressing there. Just we saw that the Wall Street has opened a little bit lower. There's still a lot of angst, I guess. Europe, though, they were looking a little bit more comfortable today. So what do we read into that comparison?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at the timings of the various announcements. The markets in Europe have been playing catch-up for most of the day, but with some trepidation, because even as they were looking at the S&P 500 that covers the shares of the top 500 companies listed in New York, going up by 9% yesterday, they weren't actually edging up by as much because they knew that something bad would come today. And they were right. You know, the traders were predicting that there'd be less of a performance on the American markets today, and that's exactly what's happened. And I think part of it is that the fundamentals of the financial system are still looking shaky. That sell-off in US Treasuries that we saw yesterday and the day before, although it's recovered some of the ground, it hasn't got back to where it was before Trump announced these major tariffs over the past week or so. And that has undermined confidence in a bedrock of the global financial system, namely the stability of US Treasuries and US Treasury bonds, which until now were the safe haven in a time of crisis.
And that is what, well, certainly what the former US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was saying. She was speaking to a US broadcaster, and she said it was that, the movement in the bonds that spooked, or to use Donald Trump's word, yippied, or however he says it, him in order to create this pause.
Yeah, he said the markets were getting a little bit yippy. We don't really know what that means, but it certainly doesn't seem to overstate how things were. Because in 2008, the financial crisis, you didn't have people selling bonds. They were a shelter. They were a place for a flight to safety. You only had it really in the last few decades in the COVID crisis, when there was the dash for cash. People were worried governments couldn't afford all the money they'd have to spend on support measures during the lockdowns, and therefore they sold even US Treasury bonds. That will have prompted some very heated discussions. We can't know what they were, but I think Janet Yellen is speculating that he would have been told in no uncertain terms, you're undermining our status not only as a foundation stone of the global financial system, but also as the place where people look to for stability. And if you want to give up that status, that could also undermine the dollar. And again, we're seeing today that people have been selling the dollar. That's something that's going to worry President Trump at a time when, in theory, his tariffs, if what he says is true, are going to be good for the American economy.
Estamos viendo mucho más que una disputa comercial. Estamos ante una guerra de influencia global. ¿Será que Trump está intentando revertir décadas de dependencia de EE.UU respecto a China por la fuerza? ¿O será esta solo una maniobra de alto riesgo para devaluar el dólar y ganar ventaja en las exportaciones? Ahora es tu turno de opinar. ¿Crees que esta decisión fortalecerá la economía estadounidense o causará un colapso mayor? ¿Y China la aceptará o tomará represalias? Comenta aquí abajo. Y no te olvides, suscríbete al Código 45, activa la campana para recibir los próximos capítulos de esta tensión global. Hasta el próximo video.